And speaking about those future generations, we have them here in the audience. We can now move to the questions that some of them are posing to the future Secretary General. So let me now go to our first question, which comes from Choi Hye-rin, a bachelor's graduate from Jeju Halla University. Hye-rin, I believe you're here somewhere. Can we have the microphone for you, and can you pose your question to the candidates, please? Yes, do we have a microphone? I believe I see you there. Is that you? Yes, perfect. Can somebody get her a microphone, please? Can somebody there? Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. As a young entrepreneur in the cultural and creative sector, I frequently see how culture bridges divides far more easily than traditional politics. So given today's intense geopolitical fragmentation, how would you, as Secretary General, strategically use the cultural and creative industries as a tool to rebuild trust between conflicting nations and revitalize multilateralism from the ground up? Thank you.
Thank you, Hye-rin. And this is, of course, open to all of you who would like to respond. Yes, Maria, followed by Rebecca. Maria, you start first.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for that very important question. Sometimes people say that culture is soft power. I think culture and intercultural dialogue and the possibility of understanding the diversity of perspectives should be the hard core of diplomacy and dialogue. So it's extremely important. Believe me, when I was president of the General Assembly, the day I think I was the most popular is when I invited BTS to join me. The K-pop culture of Korea has gone all over the world and brought a mutual understanding, energy, the ability to speak to different cultures. Not to speak about Korean series, which are at the heart of my own family household, but to say that a culture builds bridges is the hardcore, not the soft power, but the strong power of diplomacy and mutual understanding. The role of UNESCO is absolutely critical on this. And as Secretary General, I will ensure that intercultural dialogue, that culture itself is at the center of the work we do.
Absolutely, and who can beat Korean culture, right? Demon Hunters, BTS, you name it. Rebecca?
Can I just make the comment that I am freezing here?
Not great for climate change. Yes.
No. It's because we women have a lower blood pressure, you know. So the problem is who controls the air conditioning.
Please, can we bring the temperature up, please? Well said.
No, let me just go to the question of the young lady. Let me first say that I was really glad about your question because when I reformed UNCTAD, we created a special department on creative industries. And I think that this is a very powerful tool, not only to maintain culture, but to allow all the workers in the cultural space to really make a living. And it's very important for small countries, it's very important for the islands, for example. Really, creative industries are a huge part of the economy, but it's not accounted for, it's not measured, and so many times we don't take the right decisions and the right policies with respect to supporting the cultural workers and the cultural actors in the country. My second point, and I will completely agree with Maria on this, is that really culture allows us to share humanity. Yes, it's really a space where we can understand each other, we can communicate, we can exchange, and we can do something that is very central to peace, that is allow for inclusive identities, to bring to your own identity many of the other expressions in the other cultures. So really great, and thank you for bringing that to the floor.
We will move to our next question, and I have to say creative industries, as you say, intangible benefits of creative industries. I'm a chancellor of a university that celebrates creative industries, so very, very excited about the potential for that. Next up we have Musa Elhem. Musa is a master's student from Sungkyunkwan University. You have a question, and I hope we can get the mic to you quickly because we are running out of time. Musa.
My question is, trust in multilateral institutions is declining, especially among young generation. So my question is, what is the first concrete change you would make as a Secretary General in your first year to make them believe that the UN works for them?
Absolutely. Let's start with you, Carolyn, followed by Maggie Sal.
Thank you for that question. And I think that we have failed you, actually, and all the young people, in not telling the story of the UN and the achievements of the UN. Many do not know that when they fly in an airplane, that the rules of the sky, the UN is involved in that. That the food standards that we set, that it is the UN there. That the first responders sometimes in the humanitarian field, it's the UN there. That the children and the improvement in education for them, that it was the UN there as well. And so we have failed in communicating that. And as we're in the 80th year, the people who witnessed war back then, they have passed on. And so I think communication is important in terms of what the UN has done, but also in terms of the challenges we face and the solutions as well, and how young people can be involved in those solutions. Because one of the things that is overlooked sometimes is that the UN is the place where we set the norms of the world that we all agree to live by. And the UN is irreplaceable in that respect. There's no other organization that can do that. And so I think communication is important for us to make you believe in multilateralism, but also for you to choose diplomacy.
Thank you. Maggie.
Merci beaucoup. En vérité, nous avons un problème de communication avec la jeunesse. Mais l'ONU a beaucoup fait depuis 80 ans. Et nous devons aussi être justes vis-à-vis de l'organisation. Sans son action, je crois que les guerres allaient encore être beaucoup plus dévastatrices. Chaque fois qu'on a évité une guerre, c'est qu'on a travaillé pour l'avenir du monde. Donc, on a travaillé pour la jeunesse. Chaque fois qu'il y a une norme internationale, elle l'a dit, on veut aller vers un monde plus sûr. Lorsqu'on trouve des vaccins contre les maladies, on travaille pour l'avenir de l'humanité. Mais le problème, c'est que l'organisation doit adapter sa communication avec les moyens modernes où sont les jeunes. Les jeunes communiquent à travers les réseaux sociaux, à travers des phénomènes tout à fait nouveaux. Il faut donc que la communication institutionnelle classique, qui est démodée, soit adaptée à ces nouveaux canaux de communication. Mais il est clair que ce que l'ONU fait, c'est objectivement de travailler pour l'avenir de l'humanité et de travailler pour l'avenir de cette jeunesse. Mais il faut simplement que le langage soit un langage connu par la jeunesse et accepté par la jeunesse.
Thank you. So both of you, communication is key. We need to earn the trust of the young people. We quickly have two last questions from the young people in the audience, and then of course we are going to have to wrap up with the concluding remarks. I'm going to go now to Dugagjin Osmanaj, who's a prospective graduate student from Sungkyunkwan University. Dugagjin, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. The 2020s have shown that we live in a time when wars are becoming more frequent, and international norms are being increasingly challenged. This decade can also be called the decade of AI. So my question is just simply, do you think AI can positively aid the UN stopping conflicts from escalating, and if so, how?
Okay, who would like to take that? Rafael, would you like to mention that?
It can, and it can bring problems. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I think it is very clear that AI is already in our lives. We talk about it as it was, something that is coming. It's already in everything we do. There are debates within the UN and international organizations as to how to govern it or control it. And there are already, from the supply side, groupings that have already been established among the companies or producers of rare earths or cutting-edge technologies that are already organized. I think we have to be prudent in this area to make sure that we strike the right balance between having the dynamism that is going to be helping economies, is going to be helping education, innovation, and so forth, at the same time avoiding excesses and the absence of the human in the loop factor, which is at the end of the day what we need. Some people have referred to even the possibility of having an IEA for AI, which may sound flattering, but I don't agree, contrary to what people may believe. I think the algorithmic dimension is rather different from an area where you have nuclear material accountability and facilities that can be inspected. We have to be, I think, prudent in believing that we can have systems of control that are really effective. Having an illusion of verification is worse than having none at all.
Thank you for that. Now I'm just going to move on to the last two questions. They're both from Seo-Youngs. So we have Seo-Young Choi, undergraduate student, Jeju National University, and Seo-Young Yang, undergraduate student from Jeju National University. If you can both identify yourself, let's start with Seo-Young Choi first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. My question is, among the many global challenges we face today, and what do you think is the most overlooked issues that young people should pay more attention to? Thank you.
Thank you, Seo-Young Choi. Let's get the question from Seo-Young Yan, who is also here. And that's about the SDGs. Let's hear that question. We'll take both those questions and then, of course, finally conclude with your responses. Seo-Young Yang, are you here? There you are. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. Well, Mr. Mike Husell already got the similar question, but as the SDGs are set to conclude in 2030, I'm curious about your vision for the future. So my question is, what values do you believe should guide the next generation of the global development agenda? And if you could give a name to the post-2030 development goals, like MDGs or SDGs, what would it be? And what do you think should be the most important priority?
Thank you to both the Seo-Youngs. Who would like to respond? There are two questions, one about the issues that have been overlooked that the young generation should pay attention to, and the second one, what's going to succeed the Sustainable Development Goals. Rebecca, I believe, you put up, and Makisal and Maria, and let's do it quickly so we can get to our concluding statements. Thank you.
Let me take the second question and say that I think that the MDGs and the SDGs have been very important. But let's remember that the date of 2030 is arbitrary. And if we look at the SDGs, only 18% is in a track to be complied by 2030. So the agenda won't be finished by 2030. So I think that the priority has to be to support countries that want to continue with the SDGs because they have not been a reality in their countries yet, to be able to comply, to implement the agenda that continues to be an important agenda. And my second point is that we have to go beyond GDP. So it's a matter also of how we measure development. And I am an economist, so it's rare for an economist to say GDP doesn't tell you the story. We have to measure well development so we can take the right policy decisions that will benefit people. So these are my 2 points.
Thank you for those 2 points. I've just been informed we've only got 3 minutes left. I'm sorry, I thought we had extended the session, but we only have 3 minutes. So let's just get another quick response from, I believe, Macky Sall, and then I'm going to start with the concluding sentiments at the end. Yes.
Très bien. Alors, pour la question sur les défis sur lesquels les jeunes doivent prêter une grande attention, il me semble, au-delà des jeunes, c'est aussi les pouvoirs publics au niveau des États, mais également l'Organisation universelle des Nations Unies. La question de l'éducation est, à mes yeux, une question fondamentale. Elle est transversale. Elle permet de prendre en charge le défi de l'intelligence artificielle. Nous avons connu la fracture numérique par le passé. Au début des années 2000, on a beaucoup parlé de fracture numérique. Aujourd'hui, par la connaissance et par le changement de paradigme de l'éducation, et les pays asiatiques ont montré l'exemple. Après la Seconde Guerre mondiale, tous ces pays ont fait un changement notoire de paradigme dans leur éducation, ce qui aujourd'hui les a propulsés au sommet. Yes. Il faut que les pays en développement également prennent en charge le défi de l'éducation. C'est ça qui assure l'avenir de la jeunesse et c'est ça qui permettra demain de donner de l'emploi, de donner des perspectives à la jeunesse du monde.
Thank you. Merci. That's right. Education and, of course, Asia leading the way there. Now.